G'day team, welcome to another Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A. This is a big one. It's quite the biggie. Not sure how this is going to go, but there is a lot of really good points in this one. I've got a ton of notes here. This is, like I said, Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A, but there's a lot of general dog training stuff in this as well. Some parts of this are almost going like an audio book where I've done quite a bit of writing that I'm just going to read and cover off some important points that I want to get out. And other parts I've literally got a one-word note for a really big idea that I'm just going to talk about off the cuff. I haven't had notes quite like this for a Q&A before, but we'll just give it a go and see how we go. And I've got new pads on my headphones, and they're pretty tight. Yeah, let's just get into it. I got asked the question in the inner circle, what point would I consider a dog not suited for deer indicating? And which is one of those super broad, impossible questions that I get asked from time to time. And we spoke in the comments in the inner circle, and I said, why, what's going on with your dog? And the guy said, nah, I'm just wondering, like, what are some cases that you have seen that make a dog not suited for deer indicating work, like if training's gone pear-shaped or... So, I don't know. I started trying to ask a very, very simple but very, very broad question, because the answer to that, when would you consider a dog not suited for deer work? I think he said, and then if it was never going to make it as a deer dog, would you then turn it into like a bird dog or a working dog or a pet or whatever? And I said, well, there's a million different answers to that. And if I start just making up scenarios in which a deer dog wouldn't work anymore, we'd be here forever, you know. It's one of those super broad questions that I could sort of talk about forever. But we spoke about it in the inner circle, and then I sat down with a bunch of other questions too, actually, to write some notes to do a Q&A. And then I started thinking about that first question and a bunch of other questions that I've been asked over time. It's been a really interesting process over the last 10 years after making 3 or 4 different dog training series and having thousands of people follow them and ask me thousands and thousands of questions and helping people over the years. It's been a huge data gathering process too for me, right? Like people following my training and asking questions and just seeing just through the questions alone, we've always had the inner circle groups where people that are following my series are in a group that's only people that are following the series, and they can ask me questions. I answer like so many questions. But every question is a data point, because someone asks me a question, oh, my dog's doing this, or how do I fix this, or how do I fix that? And sometimes the data point is just that, as I've been learning, lots of people have this problem. And like, why do they have that problem? You know, and I was thinking about that and writing notes, and then what it really made me think about, because that question was so broad, the question was, at what point would you consider that a dog's not going to make it? That's a really difficult question, especially if it's just a hypothetical and I'm just going to come up with all these different hypothetical answers. And I've only actually seen that a few times. when a dog that was of a reasonable breed, I've got a single fly in the podcast room that's going to drive me up the wall. I've only seen that a few times, guys, when it's like a reasonable breed that you could use for a deer dog that someone's made so many mistakes with and done such a small amount of constructive work. There's two main forces, right? There's the building and the training, so doing stuff correctly. And another huge force is like making mistakes. So one is the training, constructive, and the other one making mistakes. You're creating problems and creating more work. We'll get to that later in the podcast. As far as a dog that should have been able to make it that now never can, I haven't seen that often. Okay, that's pretty damn rare that it gets to the point where it's completely unsavable. You can usually save it. But I have seen that, literally, that I can really think of dogs that should have made it that were messed up so badly and had such a lack of proper training for so long. I can only really think of it on, like, I can count them on one hand pretty much. And I can only really think of a couple real crackers. Of course, like most dogs won't make it as a good deer dog, like crazy breeds, you know. But as far as dogs that was like it was a pointer or a GSP or a wire hair or a Labrador or a heading dog or a Vizsla or something like that, and someone sort of got it with the idea to have it as a deer dog, and they just didn't train it, and they made endless mistakes for so long till they were completely out of depth with that dog. And then I've seen that dog, worked with it, and then gone, you know what, actually, this dog is like, I don't know if I could get this dog to the point where I'd want to hunt over it. And I don't think it would be fair to anyone else to say, hey, I think you could train this dog to be a good deer dog now. I've only seen that a couple of times. But what I see endlessly, and this is what this podcast is about, is things that people are doing that make it harder. You know, things that people do that make it harder. And talking about, you know, you've got your constructive training stuff that you do, actually actively training with your dog. There's a few like matrix here, you know, like a matrix or a graph. I don't really know. I'm not really a matrix graph guy. But I do sort of think about things in that way. And it's kind of like, you know, that guy with the hot, crazy matrix. It's a silly joke thing. But he draws it on the board and explains it all, and there's all different parts to it and that. There really is some powerful matrix in dog training where let's throw a few of them in here. Let's go constructive work that you do that makes the situation better. Okay, so actual training. Then let's go good management. Okay, good management, kenneling, on the lead, crating around home, supervision, routine. Okay, so management, training, actual training, management. Then let's go another block in our matrix. Mistakes. Okay, making mistakes that makes things worse. Leaving the dog out of the kennel to run around and muck around, trying to let it off the long line too soon and it's not listening. Leaving it off around the house. We're going to get into all of that. I've got a huge list of things like basically don't do. Okay, so training, management, making mistakes and stuffing stuff up. And then our fourth block to our matrix is a good result and the dog being good and good to hunt over. And the way those 4 quadrants affect each other, the more training you do and the better management that you do and the less mistakes that you make, the better result you're going to get. That's just like, that might sound ridiculously obvious, but the amount of times I really have to break it down and explain it to people. And guys, the thing is with this too, is I'm not trying to sell you my series or say you should follow my stuff or my stuff is the only way. Literally the only reason the only reason I started dog training and made the blueprint and do these Q&As and everything is, and the reason for this Q&A and like the place I'm coming from with it is like trying to prevent people from getting stuck and screwing it up and ending up in the situation. And so many people like get real stuck and make all the mistakes and end up in a really bad situation. And then we end up talking in the inner circle or even end up on the phone with someone and they're telling me what they've done and they're telling me what's happened and I'm trying to tell them and build a plan and stuff. And you see them start to click and realize, and they're having this moment of, oh my God, I'm starting to get it now. And I have made an absolute stuff up of this. Because they didn't know and they didn't realize until it got really bad and really difficult and it was getting really hard on them, really hard on the dog. And they were getting to that point where I don't know if I'm even going to make it. And now they're doing research after the fact that it's gone pear-shaped. And as they're researching it, they're having that head in hands moment where they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And I'm saying, yeah, you really needed to do more kenneling. You need to start doing more kenneling. They're like, of course, yep. Yeah. So that whole thing of me saying like, the more training you do, the better management and the less mistakes, the better result you'll get. I just like see people constantly that didn't get that yet. You know, and that's really what this whole podcast is about. It's just like how not to stuff it up. So you're not, because what happens, guys, another really interesting, and this is the real point of me bringing up those 4 quadrants. Because what happens is if you don't do enough training and you don't do enough management, okay, let's add a 5th part to our matrix. Training, management, mistakes, the quality of the outcome, and overall work that needs to be done to get the good outcome. If your management's really good and you don't make many mistakes and you do a reasonable amount of training, you'll get a really good result with not that much work. Okay? If you do quite a bit of training, your management ain't great, you make quite a few mistakes, you'll do heaps and heaps of work and your result will only be okay. And that was the other part. See, this is really what a matrix is, or I don't even know what that's called. It's like a graph of as you do more or less of one part, another part of it gets bigger or smaller. Because that first example, if your management's good, you don't make many mistakes, you do a reasonable amount of training, you'll get a very good result for not that much work. You won't have to do an insane amount of work to get a really good result. The worse your management is, the more mistakes that you make, the more work you'll have to do to get a less and less of a result. And what happens is people's management isn't that good. They make quite a few mistakes and they end up having to do more and more and more work to get less and less of a result. And that question of when do I call it quits and say I'm not going to get there with this dog? I've just leapfrogged over like 90% of my notes here. But this is the overall point of this podcast. What happens is, and this is where this gets like a little bit full on, okay? But that's why where I'm coming from with this is I'm trying to stop people. I'm trying to prevent people from getting in the situation that I see them in all the time, where they're just like, they're realizing it, and they're realizing how much they've stuffed it up, how bad it is, how easy it could have been, how much harder they've made it, how unnecessary it is that they've made the mistake. And people are just like, oh my God. And they're saying, oh, I was listening to that last podcast, man, and I was just like, it might be someone that didn't even follow the blueprint and they've run into trouble with their dog. So, and their mate's got a dog that's going really well that did follow the blueprint, and they ask their mate, and their mate goes, you should listen to the last podcast he just put out. And then they listen to it and they're having this, oh my God, and I'm talking about the person who's made all the mistakes that should have did it this way or that way. And they're just going, oh my God, that's exactly what I've done. And I can't believe I've done. And then they get the blueprint and start watching it. And they're just like, oh, I wish I had this 2 years ago. That's what I'm trying to prevent here. And what happens is so often I see it all the time. I don't actually see this one that much, okay? But what I do see as a trend, again, 10 years of doing this, quite a bit of data. This is a really interesting data point that I've noticed multiple times. This is the extreme. I haven't seen this much, but this is the thing. Trust, plenty of people come to me and they've made a heap of mistakes. They didn't quite get it. I answer a few questions and they go away and pick it up and they're away again. There's a very specific type of person that, talking about that whole matrix of not doing enough work, the management isn't right, making heaps of mistakes, and they're just creating more and more work. They're going to have to do more and more work to get a less and less of a result. What happens is, often that person, they're getting in trouble because they're trying to avoid the work. They're almost attacking the situation with like a low conscientiousness. They're not locked in. They're not taking it seriously. They're not paying attention. They're not doing it properly. They're wishy-washy about it. They're cruisy about it. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to lock in. They're like, yeah, I saw that, but I'm sort of trying to do this, and my partner or my kids or something, and there's like all these excuses, but they've never quite done it, right? They didn't start off doing the work. They've never done the work. They're not going to do the work. And what does that create in that matrix? It creates a situation where they're going to have to do more and more work. So they were never going to do it. They're not going to. They never have, and they're making more of it. And I see that. I've seen it, and every now and again I see it now, and someone's asking me questions, and then they're telling me what they've been doing and haven't been doing, and that straight away I think, this is going to be a tough one. I can't see this coming, I don't know if this is going to come right. That's very, very rare. But it explains the overall dynamic, right? That whole matrix thing of like if you keep it all tidy and you manage it right and you do the right amount of work and you don't make many mistakes, it's not that much work, man. It's actually relatively easy. And if you do what you're meant to do when you're meant to do it, and your management is pretty good, and here's the other thing: you don't even need to be like super hardcore about it either. You can actually be relatively relaxed and just take your time. But if you do what you're meant to do when you're meant to do it, you don't make a ton of mistakes, your management isn't right, you do the right amount of training, it's actually relatively easy to get a really good result. That's like the overall thing. It actually is. I'm actually going to make and start making a new dog training series this year, coming up soon, starting from a pup. But like it's already all there in the blueprint and the Palmico Dog Guide in my current series. But okay, so that's like the overall thing, right? Really, that whole thing there is such a huge part of the whole thing, that whole matrix dynamic thing. And then, so there's that whole quadrant of not making mistakes. Here's a big list of common mistakes. Too much complete, out of control, doing what the dog wants too soon. Man, I'm just going to fire through this list, and then we might just jump back to the top and start going over a few more of them in more detail. But too much complete, out of control, doing what the dog wants. Chasing animals is the big one for a deer dog, real big one. That's the real killer. So as the pup or dog's got like this chill environment and atmosphere, and it's out of control doing what it wants way too much, it's also occasionally chasing a rabbit or a bird or a whatever. That's one of the worst things. Too much out of control, running around doing what it wants. And if part of that is chasing animals, you can make your future job very difficult. And that was those small handful of dogs that should have been fine that were now very difficult. That was generally part of it, and to quite a ridiculous, outrageous extent. The dog was on a farm and it wasn't trained, and it was just running around chasing the four-wheeler, and twice a day it was just like bolting through multiple paddocks and chasing and killing rabbits and hares and stuff. And now they want to be able to go deer stalking with it and have it perfectly sneak in front and point and lock up on deer and never break and chase. And it's like a Dutch Strathar, and it's like 4 years old now and 52 kilos and just borderline psychopath. And it's never had the good work done with it. It's had a ton of mistakes, and now like the amount of work that you could put into that dog to still get not that great a result is like kind of outrageous. But that's a real big one, guys. Like not chasing animals out of control. Here's another one. Auto-retrieving on bird work. Any form of unsteadiness, so just breaking and going and chasing. I've got a note here, talk about guys auto-retrieving a bird dog training, in brackets, deliberately. How I start a bird dog, we'll go back to that. We'll carry on through this list though. Lots of full-on playing with other dogs. It affects impulse control and creates overstimulation. Here's a pretty tight little quick fire list. Overall lack of structure, control, respect, and boundaries. That's a big one. On the couch, sleeping on the bed, laughing when the dog does something silly or wrong. Dogs always walking around, barking at passers-by, horseplay, unstructured play and walking, constantly pushing boundaries, better for one person to the other, never quite gets there, double standards. Okay, double standards is when, I see it all the time. When someone comes to a one-on-one and they say, oh, I need to work on my stop drill, but then like just getting the dog out of the car or doing something with the dog, I see them give commands like 4 times in a row and the dog doesn't listen, and then they just abandon it and just leave it at that. Or they're trying to work on steadiness and overall control, and we might be doing a one-on-one, but then I see the dog around the house and the dog's just walking around constantly getting into stuff, and they're like, no, hey, get out of that. And the dog sort of veers off, does a circle in the kitchen and goes straight back to what they said, just get out of, and they go, and they just laugh and leave it. Or one person in the family is trying to train the dog really hard and the other one lets the dog get away with murder the whole time. And while it's doing stuff wrong, they're laughing at the dog. Oh, you're such a joker. The dogs know. You know, double standards, man. Like, and we're going to get into this. All this stuff. Too much complete out of control doing what the dog. So we'll go back to the top of the list. Too much complete out of control doing what the dog wants. Just like off around the house, tearing around, digging holes, chewing up the garden, that barking at people. The dog's just tearing around doing whatever it wants the whole time. And it's in that mode mentally all the time. And that's what it creates. That's like dogs just become what they're doing all the time. And so if it's doing that around the house all the time, and then you want to, for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day, what do you think it's going to be like when you take it down to the park and train it for 15 minutes? It's going to be difficult, you know? So that's management. So that's why kenneling's really important, crating's really important. When the dog does have a freedom session, right from a pup, it's sort of as supervised as it can be. And there's just rules bound, to quote Cesar Millan, rules, boundaries, and limitations. Like, you have to have them. And if a pup or a dog right from a young age is just tearing around, just creating havoc and doing whatever it wants, like for too much of the day, when you then try and go and train it, it's going to be very difficult versus plenty of time in the kennel. A pup will sleep for 17, 18, 20 hours a day anyway. This is another whole subject I was thinking I should do like an Instagram reel on or something, is so many people's dogs, pups, are actually like complete lack of sleep, totally overwhelmed, overstimulated, out of control, like beside themselves, kind of going nuts. That's actually very common too. They don't actually even get enough time in a crate or kennel, and they don't have enough safe space and quiet time and structure to even just be chill within themselves. they're kind of like stressed out and highly strung and out of control and have a ton of bad habits. And then a training session becomes someone taking it down to the park and just butting heads. And there's more tension there, and they're expecting too much of that pup or dog based on the way they're managing the whole rest of its time. So then training becomes more tension and stress, and it's just a disaster. It's just an absolute disaster. Like, if you manage everything right, making progress in training is actually relatively easy and chill. You know, and that's a very frequent comment from people that watch the blueprint, watch me training, print in the blueprint. They're like, oh, just say you make it just look so easy. It kind of is easy when you do it right. And a huge amount of that making it look easy. I'm not making it look easy. It is easy. But that comes from, it's exactly what I was just saying. That whole quadrant thing of why it looks easy for me in training is because my management's really good and I'm not making any mistakes. So I'm getting a really good result out of minimal work. You know, the better your management is, imagine those quadrants in a graph. Like, the better your management is, so that bar is bigger, your mistakes bar is really small, then your work bar can go down a little bit, but your result bar goes up. It's just like sliders, you know. Chasing animals, I've already talked about that, but like, that's like kryptonite. If anywhere in your routine and management in that a pup or dog is chasing rabbits, possums, birds, stuffed cats, stuff like that, no good. Any form of unsteadiness, like throwing the ball and the dog's just running for it, you know. Anything that's the opposite of impulse control. So then I've got here people auto-retrieving with a bird dog. That's what I wouldn't do that. In this new series, the new series I'm going to get a Labrador pup. This new series is going to be called Foundations. Paul Michael's Dog Training Foundations. It's essentially going to be a general dog training series, a bird dog training series, and a deer dog training series, but you can use them all interchangeably. I'm going to get a Labrador pup, and I'm going to do 12 months of training, just general training, real foundational stuff, do all the crating, long line work, stop, go, come, overall control, general foundation, like all of the foundational stuff. So I've got like the perfect clean slate with all of the tools and bits and pieces that I need and want to then go on and do everything else. And then I'm going to start bird dog training, but I'm going to start my bird dog training 100% steady to the throw right from the start. There's pros and cons to both, but that's my favorite way of doing it. And I think overall, that's like a really good way for probably the most people to do it. I'm not saying it's necessarily the best way if you want to train a trialing dog or something, but most people that just want a good gun dog, especially if you want to have it as a steady bird dog and be able to use it as a deer dog and like the least amount of work possible for the best result possible, and just like a good gun dog that doesn't take an insane amount of training and it's like the minimum amount of work for the best result possible with the lowest chance of mistakes possible. I think no matter which way you slice it and dice it and however you want to do it, if you want to start throwing unsteady retrieves right from an 8-week-old pup and then add steadiness later and do place boards or whatever you want to do, doing all those unsteady throws early, particularly if you want like a bit of a versatile that you can indicate and track and like a pet and chill and all of that. And also if you don't want to do like a ton of placeboard work and tons of training, and if you want to rule out e-collars, it's very difficult to start with that unsteady throwing and have it dog like steady and going real good at 12 months old anyway. It's definitely very difficult for like, if you're going to create a system for as many people to follow as possible, like so thousands of people are going to follow this thing. Some of them it's like their first dog, second dog, inexperienced, just someone just wants something to follow to get a good gun dog. It's pretty difficult for lots and lots and lots and lots of people to get a gun dog going real good by 12 months old without running into trouble. Trust me. I'd never recommend people do that because so many people are going to run into so much trouble doing that. As soon as you go, I'm going to spend 12 months getting all of my foundations, and let's say I get a dog, a 8-week-old pup in April or May. So it's going to be 12 months old at the start of the next duck shooting season. As soon as I go get it in May, train it for a year, and skip its first season, and keep it steady to the throw right from the start. And now I've got 12, and I've got my whole foundation. And now I've got 12 months to have it retrieving good with basic back and sides and crosses and like quite a bit of cool stuff by next season at 24 months old. Almost anyone can do that. So that trying to do it by 12 months, I reckon most people will have difficulty with that. And this is from a lot of experience helping a lot of people train a lot of dogs. You give me 24 months, I reckon almost anyone can do that. Have a steady dog and you say, here, get over here, point at a spot, sit, stay there. You can have it staying there while birds are coming and shooting birds, send it back, retrieves everything. And like, it shouldn't even be that much work. Just consistent, nice, consistent amount of work throughout the season, throughout the years. And the other thing with that too is then if you wanted it to be a deer dog as well, after that first bird season, then you can do some deer dog work, which is even less work after all that foundation of those first 2 years. And within a few months after its first bird dog season, you could be out indicating deer with it. And now it's an all-rounder by the time it's like 36 months old. Not even. But for a deer dog, auto-retrieving on birds or auto-retrieving retrieve, so you're throwing a ball or a dummy and the dog's just breaking and going, that makes life difficult. And that's one of those things that that chasing game, out of control and unsteady to any type of retrieve, that's one of those things that you can create. That's a huge mistake where your work quadrant gets way bigger and your quality of your result quadrant starts to shrink. and you're going to have to do more and more work to try and keep your result good. And you're in a situation now where you might have to do way more work and your result's never going to be as good. You keep them steady, way less work to get a way better result. And yeah. So yeah, that whole auto retrieving thing, or unsteady to the throw and retrieves and stuff, that's just a huge one for me. That can make life way harder for people. And I had a note here, how I do that bird dog training. Yeah, keep it steady. And you don't even need to start retrieving until, you can generally start retrieving at about 8 or 10 months old. But at that point, there's not that much to be gained. And again, there's a million different ways of doing it. And there's heaps of good trainers and good systems that start off throwing dummies way earlier and all that sort of thing. And there's pros and cons to both sides too. But for me, overall, especially if you want a versatile that's going to do the deer dog thing as well, and if it's just your average person that just wants a good gun dog and they're not trying to win international gun trials and things, 100% hand on my heart, I think that's the best way to do it. If I'm going to help heaps of people to train a bird dog, the only way I do it like that is because I think that's the best way to do it, to get the best result with the least amount of work, with the lowest chance of big stuff ups, with the lowest chance of failure. And as soon as someone's trying to get me to help them to get that dog ready by 12 months old for bird dog work, it's like, man, that's tough. And there's a huge risk of things being way more difficult later and creating way more work, and even pushing into that territory where it's like, we've now created some situations with this dog that we're never going to be able to completely eliminate. Bad situations, unsteadiness, bloody handful, pain in the ass. That's my take on it. Excuse me, I'm just having a drink. Huge one, real common. Lots of full-on playing with other dogs. It affects impulse control and creates overstimulation. So this is a real common one, like someone that's having trouble with their dog. The dog's continues to be a handful, just won't listen, bad on the stop, unsteady, pulls on the long line, just hard. It's that classic situation where they're now in a situation where they are doing more work than most people and their results still terrible. Tons of full-on out of control playing with other dogs creates that dynamic. Because the dog is used to getting in that crazy, full-on, overstimulated mind state and is just tearing around. It's super fun and exciting and exhilarating for the dog. And it just makes training and control and listening and steadiness like way less interesting for the dog. And it really does, guys, like, dogs, again, that line, dogs become what they do most. And it can also create a lot of problems for people if their dog, they might have a dog at their friend's place or a family member's place that when they go there, they just let the dogs out in the backyard right from a young age, and they just tear around like mad, chasing each other, doing zoomies around the house and that, and barking and chasing and all of that. I'm not saying don't do any of that. And even Print had freedom sessions with other dogs as a pup and used to run around and do that. But he did that 2 or 3 times a day for 10 or 15 minutes. Plus, the whole rest of the time was really good management, very few other mistakes, and I kept an eye on it. And if it got out of hand, I'd go out and stop it. And everything else was right, But it's just one more thing that if you're making a whole bunch of other mistakes, the rest of your management isn't. It's when these things start to stack up too, and the dog's free around the house, being a pain in the ass, getting into mischief, not crated, not kennelled enough. You're not doing enough training as well, and you take it somewhere and it just goes absolutely ham with other dogs for large amounts of time regularly. A huge part of this too is one of the huge principles from my training is the way dogs prioritize activities. Super, super important principle. And as soon as that charging around and playing with other dogs becomes the most exciting and fun thing for that dog growing up, and that's what it's thinking about and looking forward to most of the time, and training with you is a lower priority than that, you're kind of screwed. You need to keep training the highest priority activity. That's a huge part of that. But trust me, lots of full-on playing with other dogs for so many reasons. It's the way it prioritizes activity. It screws up all the impulse control, creates overstimulation. It can also create a lot of intensity towards other dogs, and people end up in really difficult situations where they might live in town. Every time they go for a walk, there's other people walking their dog, and their dog, every time they see another dog, which is almost all the whole time they're out walking the dog, their dog's just peeking out, staring at the other dogs, and that's all it's thinking about, and they can't even run a stop drill with another dog within 200 meters. Their dog's just totally externally focused and looking at other dogs, and everything's completely blown out of the water anytime there's a dog in sight. And that can happen from every time. If the dog does too much of that full-on crazy insane playing with other dogs, every time it sees another dog, its mind goes into that mind state of like insane super crazy play. And even if you're like, sit, stay there, it's looking at the other dog 100 meters away, just peeking, thinking, I just want to run over there and go insane like I do all the time. That can be a real hard one. Okay. Overall lack of structure, control, respect, and boundaries. So just the dog's just cruising around the whole time, and it's like in your way, and it's bumping into stuff, and it's like licking the plate on the coffee table and bumping stuff over and barking at someone outside and walking back in and out, and it's on the couch, it's on the bed. People laugh when it does something wrong. Lots of horseplay, mucking around, unstructured play and walking, constantly pushing boundaries. It's always walking around and doing stupid stuff, and you're like, hey, ha, don't do that. God, you're such a rascal, aren't you? Ha, ha, ha. Guys, that makes everything way harder. That's a huge mistake, that whole thing. Like the whole atmosphere is wrong. And you can't go from that 23 hours a day and then put it, let's say 22 hours a day of that. Well, you're going to sleep, aren't you? So let's say 10 hours a day of that. Because that's it. When the dog's out and it's just walking around, and then it's or too much of all of that stuff just makes it way more difficult. Way more difficult versus if you've watched the blueprint, you know the dog's either in a kennel or the Palmico dog guide. It's either in a kennel, in a crate, pretty chill freedom session around home, lots of walks, bit of time inside that's supervised early, lots of training sessions, walks on the long line, which are good walks and exercise and engagement with you and training, but like everything is kept chill and structured, you know? And if you don't do enough of that and you do heaps of this other stuff, again, you're screwing up that whole graph. And the amount of work that you're going to have to do is going up and up and up. And the quality of the result that you're going to get is going down and down and down. And up and up and up and down and down and down. And it's just you're going to have to do more and more and more work to get less and less and less of a result. And that's the whole thing. The dog's better for one person than it is for the other. That's another pretty common dynamic and data point from the last 10 years and thousands of people. And it's interesting too, the way people come to you and they're like, "G'day, I followed your series, followed it to a T, and just having lots of trouble with these couple of areas with the dog, just after some tips." And then we start talking and back and forth, and okay, and I'm thinking you shouldn't be having that much trouble with this basic stuff. And then you talk more and backwards and forwards and ask questions, and they're like, "Oh, there is actually this one thing that we do, and we go here, and the dog plays like crazy with someone else's dog, or he is a bit of a nightmare for my partner actually, and she probably does let him get away with way too much crazy stuff, and I have been throwing the ball for him like totally unsteady at the park just to sort of burn off some energy, you know." And all of a sudden, I do take him out to my parents' farm, and he has chased a rabbit. He's chased rabbits a few times out there. And actually, I went on a holiday and my dad looked after him, and he chased rabbits. Like, I think that's actually been happening quite a bit. And all of a sudden, there's like 4 or 5 or 6 of the main worst things happening constantly. And they haven't been training that much either. And they'll, but the whole conversation started with, I've kind of followed the training really well, and I've just been having a bit of trouble. But as we talk about it and break the situation down more, it's like, bro, you're so far off. It's actually amazing. It's amazing it's not 10 times worse. And that's what I mean about, it's actually surprising how chill it can be and how little work it is to get such a good result if you do a reasonable job and you don't do a bunch of stuff wrong. Yeah, it never quite gets there. Double standards. So that's like expecting the dog to be awesome in training and putting a ton of pressure on it, but then doing a whole bunch of other stuff wrong. You know, it's like saying you want to lose weight and going and walking on the treadmill for 20 minutes a day. And I'm going to lose weight because I need to lose weight and I really want to lose weight. So you walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes a day, which walking on a treadmill for 20 minutes probably burns like 150 calories. But then you go, I walked on the treadmill, so I'll go get a Big Mac Attack combo on the way home, which is like 1,500 calories or 1,800 calories. And it's just like, no, bro, your data's, your macros are all screwed up. Very important. So this is sort of on the same thing. the overall vibe, attitude, atmosphere, seriousness, professionalism, control, structure, and execution has never been there. That's it. Like, everything's chill and you know, like, and I get it in one-on-one sometimes. And someone's like, hey, you know, someone comes, you know, messages me or something and says, hey, I'm training this dog. I really want it to be good. It's not going that well. Can we catch up and do a one-on-one? And we start walking around, start running drills. They're doing a ton of stuff wrong, and I start to try and explain it. And they keep changing the subject, and they're not really listening, and they're not really doing it. And I have to say to them, like, there's something here that you're not getting. Like, I'm telling you, this is, I'm going to skip forward here. That I'll read this note again. The overall vibe, attitude, atmosphere, seriousness, professionalism, control, structure, and execution has never been there. Here's another note. No one is really in control, and everyone just wants everything to be nice and chill. This is a subject that I keep running into, because people are asking me like, oh, I'm trying to do this with my dog, but now that you say it, we do this and we do that, and they're all nice, and it's all like this light, fluffy conversation. And I'm trying to say you can't do that. But sometimes we're busy, and my partner just like, okay, that's cool. Do you see the difference and the contrast? I've been getting into game fishing. Okay, and there's a guy like catching marlin and stuff, so towing skirted lures and catching marlin. And I towed lures for the first time ever the other day, and I caught a yellowfin tuna in the first like half an hour of towing lures ever, you know, because I did my research and I set everything up right, like exactly how you meant to do it. And lo and behold, like, it worked perfectly, basically straight away, and was actually relatively easy. And it was really cool. And so I've been doing a lot of research on game fishing. And I do tend to, because I've worked on the dog training thing so much, and multiple things actually, but the dog training thing has been my main area of focus for a long time, and I've taken it to a fairly high level. And I do cross-reference a lot. Like, I take sentiments and ideas from other disciplines, and I do find that's really useful, especially basically studying other people doing other things at a very high level. There's been a couple of things. I've had this. I've been working on these notes for ages, right? I'll do that, and I'll have like ideas, and I'll take notes and write it down about dog training. And I'm working on podcasts and planning like my next series and all sorts of stuff. One thing, and at the same time, I've been doing a lot of fishing lately. And I've been doing a lot of fishing for quite a long time now. And I do a lot of fishing on my own, and occasionally I fish with other people. And I've actually been filming my fishing too. I've actually been filming lots of fishing for a long time now. I'm going to make some fishing videos and stuff. But it's a really good it's really good for me to be able to put down the tools on the dog training thing and actually focus on something quite intensely like that. It's really good for me to switch subjects. I get like too hard out into things and kind of burn out on them, and it's really good to, and I need something else that I'm actually quite full on into to properly pull me away from the other thing, which is dog training, and fishing sort of that. It's really good. And it's good to do it in something that's not hunting too, because when I'm hunting, that's because I basically only hunt with dogs, that's still dogs. So it's good to put the whole dog thing down and be able to at least occasionally 20% of the time completely switch off from it and really dive into something quite full on. And doing that, you do actually learn quite a bit, actually tons, about your main area of focus by focusing on something else. I find it really useful too. Anyway, there's a really good podcast. I've been getting into fly fishing too, like saltwater fly fishing. There's a really good podcast, Millhouse, and it's some of the best saltwater fly fishermen and women in America. And you know, they fish tournaments and all of that. Super freaking serious. Like, it's insanely serious how full on it is. Big money, big tournaments, huge amount of time and energy put into it. And like, people take it really freaking seriously, you know? And that Millhouse, they basically just interview all of the best fishermen that they know, and they're full time, so they guide full time or tournament fish full time. It's crazy how serious it all is. And they were talking to one of the guys that was the absolute, like, one of the best fishermen, saltwater fly fishermen in America and in the world. And he had this period where he was winning all of these tournaments, and they were talking about like what did you do to get to that next level to do it? You know, was it like, and you would think it'd be something to do with your what technique, what lure, what fly, what did you change? Did you go up and from a 9 weight to a 12 weight, from 12 weight to a 9 weight rod? Did you completely change something of in your fishing system or what? And the super obvious, super plain answer and extremely common answer is none of that. And it's all the word is that the word they use is intensity. And I really liked it. I was like, that's freaking cool, because that's actually what it is. And that's how I like to fish. And that's why I like to fish alone most of the time. And especially if I'm filming, because I don't want to talk about anything else all day. And that's what he said. He was like, and it was the guy conducting the interview, Andy Mill. He's I think he's in like his 70s now, so he's not hard out tournament fishing and stuff, but he was a very good full on tournament fisherman. Did really well in the tournaments, one of the best. And he's also an ex-Olympic skier. And he interviews all of the best fishermen. And he said, like, what did you switch up for those few years that you really cleaned up? And the guy just said, just intensity. And Andy was like, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's really the whole thing, eh? And he was like, yep. And he was like, we just got there earlier, fished all day. We didn't talk all day. So you're not like looking for the fish and like, man, you should have seen, I had, like, you're not talking about something funny from last night. You're not talking about some difficulty you're having with your partner. You're not distracted. You're not talking. All they're doing is trying to find a fish and catch it. And they're not even talking, and they don't even want to. all day. Like intensity and focus. And the amount of time someone turns up and does a one-on-one for dog training, and and it's all like, hey, if you want to turn up and pay me to do a one-on-one and you just want to talk, we can do that if you want. But I'm really there to show you how to train your dog. That's why I make these podcasts. That's why I made the blueprint. That's why I made the Palmikas. That's why I make all these series. I'm really just trying to help you to train your dog. And the amount of times I'm doing a one-on-one, and every time we're in the middle of something, the other person's like, oh yeah, because of it. And they're just like distracted and all over the show. They're like not even locked in. And like, man, it's super common. It's not even that long, like a 2-hour session. It's only a couple of hours. You know, and a training session with your dog is like 15 minutes. You know, like, and honestly, that's the biggest thing. Like the training system it's not that full on. It's pretty easy. You crate the dog sometimes and you kennel the dog sometimes. You take it for a walk and do a couple of drills. But you've got to actually do it. Like so much of it is just mindset. You know, and the craziest thing about it is that it's actually not that much work. And so a lot of people, this is the whole main point of this, is a lot of people end up doing like 10 times more work than they even need to for way less of a result. And anything's like that. That's like, anything's like that. Fishing is like that big time. You know? If you have the wrong trawling lures, if you have the wrong drag setting with the wrong hook, you're going to drop. And if you have the wrong drag setting with the wrong hook, you're going to drop. I talked to a guy today who at one point hooked 19 marlin, and out of 20 bites, they landed one. Out of 20 bites, they landed one fish because his hook setup was wrong with the wrong drag setting. And a good setup is like 80%. A really good hookup rate on marlin is 80%. If you get 10 bites, you get 8 of the fish, and 2 fall off. So if you want to catch a fish, just do it right and go out and so you only need to hook 1 or 2 and you land one and you've got a fish. Or you can go out and just trawl for days and hit 19 fish and you still haven't got one. It's just ridiculous. Like, if you're gonna do it properly, man. And that's the craziest thing, is it's not even that hard. You've just got to do the research, have a plan, do it properly, have at least some intensity and focus, and like, it's not even that hard. But honestly, I don't want to get like super, this is already getting super ranty, and I don't want to get like too full on or zoom out too far here, but that intensity and focus thing these days, like with social media and everything, it's pretty crazy at times. Like, don't get me wrong, there's loads of people out there killing it, doing really well, going high, like just going hard out, getting heaps done, doing really well. It's pretty crazy though, the amount of times you're just trying to get some basic stuff done these days, and you're making phone calls and dealing with people and doing stuff, and like people are just clean off, just wishy-washy, super chill, barely listening, tons of mistakes. Oh, what was that? What were we doing? Did I not call you back? Did I, like, there's just this extreme lack of focus. And distraction. One more thing on this, okay, and we'll keep moving on. and it was, I think I'd just like finished writing a heap of these notes and stuff. I just did a big writing session on notes for this podcast, and then I was like gonna, have lunch and chill out for a bit, and I like opened up YouTube, put my headphones on, and I think I'd already seen that video actually, and it was Bond's. What's his name? What's his real name? Someone Fleet. He's a lure Bonds. Look up Bonds lures. He's a really well-known marlin fisherman that makes his own lures, and he captained on boats in Kona, Hawaii. He's from New Zealand, and he captained boats in Kona, Hawaii, and Cape Verde, and caught a heap of fish. Did really well at it. He's kind of an intense dude. And it was really funny because I've just been like taking these and thinking about all this stuff, and like, man, like people need to like concentrate and focus and just like knuckle down a little bit, just get it all right, and it'll be way easier. And it probably actually quite a similar thing for Bonds too, with people asking him like, man, how do I catch a marlin? I've been fishing, dropped quite a few fish. What do I do? How do I do this? How do I do that? So people are coming to you and asking, you're trying to tell them, and sometimes they're not listening, and it's like, bro, why are you asking and then not doing it? And you're watching them do it, thinking, man, knowing it'd be way easier if they just did this, and they're trying to avoid the work, but in trying to avoid some of the work, they're putting themselves in a situation where they're doing way more work than you're even asking them to do for less of a result. It can be hard work to watch. That's like the whole thing. And there's a video where Bonds is helping a guy set up his boat, this young guy who's just starting marlin fishing. And he's showing him how to tie lure rigs and traces. And Bond says to him, and all your traces are the right length, right? And he goes, no. And Bond says, why not? And he goes, well, because it's my first time making lure traces. And he's like, that's two very different mindsets clashing or meeting, two frames. Bonds is just like, they've all got to be the same length. And the guy's like, but no, because it's my first time and I haven't. You could very easily just say, okay, got it. And just make them the same length. Measure them out. Cut. If you've stuffed it up, cut them, make new ones. It's only a bit of mono and some crimps and a bit more time and a bit more focus and a tiny bit more intensity. Like, are we doing it or are we not? It was quite a small thing, but I'd just been writing, taking all my notes. And I was like, that's That's it. And I'd just written that note down from Andy Mill and his mates going, what is it? It's intensity and focus. And that's the thing, you don't even need that much. It's not even that hard. Like, trust me. It's not that hard. Anyone can do it. The dog training, my style of dog training, we're not training, and my style of bird dog training, we're training very good dogs. Like, that's the other thing too, is that style of bird dog training. Because then people say, oh, but what about this that I see people doing, dog trialists do, and some of the commands that they have and how good their back and sides are and all of that. How do I do this and how do I do that? And the poison bird or whatever the bird, you can make the dog run past one bird to get another and all this extra stuff. And it's like, bro, how good's your dog now? Oh, you don't have one. Oh, you haven't even trained one yet. Like, forget about all of that. If you haven't even done it yet, and let's just work out like what you can do, what you really need, what you really want, and you might find you can actually get way better than what you ever thought you could, much easier, and probably have a dog that's way better than like 99% of dogs out there. And it's totally achievable, and it's not even that hard. But if you want to do it, you do have to like lock in and have some. Let's go back up to these like the overall vibe, attitude, atmosphere, seriousness, professionalism, control, structure, and execution. There does have to be some of that there. There has to be a little bit of intensity somewhere, and just like, but the thing is, it's not like that even that much. It's just like, let's talk about that in 10 minutes when we get home, and let's just focus on let's just do this training session here for the next 10 minutes properly. That's how low the bar is, but sometimes it is hard to get people just to that, to get them to the starting lines of like, okay, let's stop talking about everything else and just do this for like 10 minutes. You know, and we can't have the dog running around barking with the neighbor's dogs and chasing rabbits at the farm. You know, it's not much, but you do have to do it, you know. I had a one-on-one trainer at the gym once that wanted to talk about everything else except training. Like, if I'm at the gym training, I don't want to talk about, I don't know, the weather, or let's just train and talk about training. Let's just, what's the next set? What's the next weight? How was the form? That's good. What should we do next time? Like, focus. We can talk about all of that other stuff in 20 minutes. Let's focus on what we're doing. I've worked with people like that too. Like, I've got a line here. I'm just going to say it. Just shut the hell up and focus. I don't want to hear the excuse. I don't want to hear what your flatmate did or what your partner thinks or what your father-in-law said. Everyone's got, but such and such. But I was wondering, and did hear, and it was this, it was that. Like, this is what I'm doing right now, right? I'll talk about this for hours after, before, after, and at other times. And I'll answer all of those questions. Everything, what your flatmate did, I'll talk about it for 3 hours on a podcast. And why it might be okay, or why you maybe could do less of it, or why you should do none of it, depending on what it was. We'll talk about what your partner thinks, and I'll let you know what I think about that. Or whatever your father-in-law said. But if we're going to do it, if you're going to follow my training, at some point, you've got to put everything else down, and let's just go and do it for 15 minutes. And then let's not make a ton of mistakes until tomorrow when we're going to go do it for 15 minutes again. That's like all it is. And all of a sudden a few months has gone past and you've made a ton of progress. And all of a sudden a year's gone past and like your deer dog's fully trained and it's a weapon, and everyone that sees is just like, I can't believe how good that dog is. And you're like, nah, me either, to be honest. I hear that all the time too. People are just like, I can't believe, like, I just been hunting, my dog did X, Y, Z. It was insane. I can't believe it, how good it is. That's where I want people to be. And heaps of people do that. Thousands of people do that too. You know, I don't want people to get the wrong impression by this, because this whole podcast is focusing on what not to do, how to not stuff it up. The people that get it right, there's nothing really to talk about. It's just like, cool, bro. That's awesome. And there's thousands of them. But they don't need any advice. They don't need a podcast. They're doing it, you know. This is trying to help as many people as possible that do end up, or that don't end up doing it properly. Next note. So many people stuff their dog up for silly reasons and bad advice. Like, so much of it is totally unnecessary. And just like a stupid, flippant passing remark or comment or opinion, and someone's doing a great job kenneling their dog, crating their dog, doing the long line work. They're a couple of months in another 5 or 6 months, they're going to have made so much progress that it's just going to get easier and easier and better. And someone's like, oh, you should, man, you can't just keep your young dog on a long line like that every time you're out. You got to like let it off. Let it be a dog. Let it run around. That's all bullshit. Bring a duck shooting and just let it auto retrieve with my dog. Like, it can I've had that over and over and over. Like, someone was doing really well and someone's said, just do this or just do that, or you don't have to do this or you don't have to do that, and just throwing them completely off, you know. And then months later they're talking to me, or they've listened to a podcast and they're the person that, oh man, I knew it too. I knew I shouldn't have done that, man. And they said it'll be just do this, just do that. And now it's just like, oh. And like, where's that person now? The person that said, no, just do this or just do that. They're not there to fix it. Like this line. So many people stuff their dog up for silly reasons and bad advice, just real silly reasons, totally unnecessary. Letting their dog out to run around like crazy with other dogs instead of just leaving it in the truck for half an hour while you're at someone else's place, and just leave it in the truck for half an hour and take it for a 10-minute session walk on the long line when you get home. You know, like real silly, unnecessary stuff. And remembering that this is only the first 12 months, and then the dog can run around with your mate's dog all the time, or it can run on the farm, but it's steady to a rabbit, or it's got, now you've actually got your emergency stop command and callback, recall, you know, and it's not a pup anymore, and you've got control of it, and you've got some structure and foundation there. And now it's actually good to put it in situations where there's like a higher level of distraction, and it's all part of training and progress. But people do too much too soon. People do too much of the wrong stuff and not enough of the right stuff way too soon. Here's another line you really do have to stick with the program. There's another dog. I've got a dog's name here. I'm not going to say the dog because I don't want to call the person out or anything. This is years and years ago, and it was someone that it was all messagey through Instagram and social media and stuff. And, I'm following the blueprint. I'm doing this and I'm doing that, but I am having a bit of trouble, and it is this and it is that. And I was like, I'll help you out. Yeah, I'll help you out. And then, man, we went and did a one-on-one with this dog, and it was just totally out of control. It was like 7 or 8 months old, was trying to do a stop drills with it, and it was just like rolling around on the ground and tangling itself up on the long line and flipping out and just totally out of control. And I've got a lot more experience now than I did then. Not so much with dogs, but dealing with people. And I was like, the dog's pretty full on, far out. I didn't want to say, like, now, as soon as I see a dog doing that, especially if it's 7 or 8 months old, it's just like, whoa, this dog should, like, what have you been doing? Because you've obviously been making a lot of mistakes and you haven't done enough of the work. So what have you been doing? And we sort of did get there to that conversation. And by the end of that day and hanging out with that person, I have been getting home a flatmate to let the dog out. And, it has been this. It's exactly what I was saying earlier. I've been following your series and I just need some help. But then the more we start talking, actually, now that you say it, it is this and it is. And they sort of know. That's the funny thing too. They sort of know, because the more you talk about it, they're like, I have been doing this. Yeah, you're right. Oh, okay. And that was definitely one of those scenarios where that person had not done enough of the work and they had made a load of mistakes and everything was very chill and nice and wishy-washy. And they were never going to have that intensity and focus. It's just conscientiousness, really. Just like, honestly, fuck all that mucking around, fuck all that messing around. Let's just get this done. Okay, what do we do? Let's do it. Like what people have watched the series, know how I train, know what it is. Listen to the podcast, everything. And then they're like, and then we're like 3 hours into working with this dog, and I actually am a flatmate and this and my partner and my dad and there's all this other stuff. It's like, bro, what are we doing? it's kind of silly, you know. I get it when people they actually don't know, like someone hasn't followed my series and they come to me. I had that recently with a guy, and he does tons of hunting. He's had a few other dogs. He's had farm dogs and stuff, and he literally didn't know. That was one of those things where he was like having issues with his dog. His mate had followed the blueprint. He was like, man, my dog's doing all this weird stuff. He started listening to the podcast. He got the blueprint. He got in a circle. And then it took him a while to get up to speed, but once he got up to speed, he had this big moment as, oh man, I can't believe I've done all this stuff. And yeah, he was like, I totally see exactly what I've done and I'll sort it out, you know. And he was straight away out there doing stuff and getting back to me the next day. Man, I just had the awesomest session and totally see what I need to do now. So it's totally fine. So I totally get that. Someone just, if they don't know, you don't know. But people that do know, and they're not doing it, but they kind of say that they are when they know they're not. Here's another line. There's an infinite number of ways to stuff it up. And if we keep talking about those, then we're focusing on, and that's what we're focusing on, is spending time on. And we're way better off focusing on how we're going to do it right. That's the thing. That's sort of like that question, when would you ride a dog? When do you know that a dog isn't going to make it anymore? And I'm like, why? What's the dog doing? Just hypothetically, like, what are the scenarios? Well, there's a million scenarios, you know? That's the same thing. Like, how can you stuff it up? There's infinite amount of ways to stuff anything up. But and I'm not saying my training definitely isn't the only way. No way. There's loads of different ways of training dogs, and there's heaps of good trainers out there that do it differently, that get a good result. But if you're going to follow my training, and it makes sense to you, and you can't find anything else that you're like, that makes more sense, and you're like, okay, I'm going to follow the blueprint, I'm going to do that. If we start talking about, okay, so because there's this other thing. Sometimes you end up, what you realize you're talking about, sometimes people are asking questions, and, I'm sort of like, I'm following it, and I've got it, and I'm following it. But sometimes I'm really busy, and I go away for work, and then my partner doesn't really do it with the dog, and I go to the farm, and my dad, and there's all these excuses, and there's just this big list of things that they're doing completely wrong. And they're like, so I don't really have the time, but I do want to do it, and I want a good deer dog, and it's just they're going around in circles. When you boil it down, what they're asking you is, how do I get a dog like yours following your training, but not following your training? It's like the question, their whole mindset doesn't even make sense, and it's impossible. It's like, how do I do it without doing it? How do I get it without doing it? The answer's obvious. You can't, and you've got to do it. You know, and that's the other thing. It's not even that hard. And there's an infinite number of ways to stuff it up. And there's only a few ways of doing it right. And my training is one of the ways of doing it right. There's far more ways of stuffing it up than there are of doing it right. In my series, I'm showing you how to train a dog. It's worked for thousands of people. There's infinite ways to stuff it up. We could talk about them forever, or I could just show you how I train a dog, and you could either do it or not do it. If you do it the way I do it, then we can talk about that and how you can do it the way I do it better. But if we start comparing other possible ways and every possible way that you could stuff it up, we can talk about that forever and we're just wasting time. That I had another note that I scrolled past. The military. There's this attitude and this thing, like a dynamic. There's a couple of different sides to it. One is, like the don't ask why I'm telling you to do it, just shut up and do it. Like I don't agree with that. I don't learn like that. I can't be taught like that. I never have been able to. And if you watch one of the most common and biggest criticisms, like the blueprint gets in my training and the way I teach people to train dogs, is that I go on and on forever, and that's because it's in the trailer of the blueprint, has been right from the start, that I don't only show you what to do, I explain why you do it so you understand how to do it properly. In that, that's a huge part of the reason why it works. That's a huge part of these podcasts and everything, So, and like this podcast is explaining why doing it the way I do it is important. Like why the why is important, because otherwise there's all these ways to stuff it up and how difficult and hard it can get and all of that. But a couple of things. Well, the military, right? I don't know, like if you think of, say, the Forrest Gump movies, and like Forrest Gump, and they're teaching them how to clean the weapons and when the drill sergeant walks into the barracks, and they've got all of the beds lined up, and the guys are like in this big dorm room barrack thing, all heaps of beds in one room. And you know what the army's like? Like you've got to have your boots polished and your uniform right and your bed made and everything in the right place, and you got to be able to clean your gun fast and do all of that stuff. Most of that is really just training mindset and intensity. That's really what that is. And again, I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea here. Like I'm going on about intensity and all of that. Trust me, it's far from like that military style intensity, but it explains the point, right? And like I'm saying, dog training should actually be chill and relaxed, but that's one of the most important. Like once you've got all of the step-by-step things to do, all it takes is that conscientiousness and focus and a little bit of intensity, and you'll get it. If you don't have any intensity, and it's just like, I didn't really have time, and it's just, oh my gosh, the dog's just such a clown, and my uncle said this, and I'm always so busy, and my partner and that, so I just haven't had any time to do it. We've made loads of mistakes, and so it's just going terrible, to be honest. It's not working at all. That doesn't work. You have to have some element of focus, and it's a very low level of it at a very small amount. But if you don't have some of it, it's not going to work. And obviously military, getting ready for war, it's a very serious activity where lives are at stake and all of that. But actually dog training, especially as a trainer and someone that trains people to train dogs, it's actually very serious too. And that's why the blueprint is serious. There is quite a bit of intensity in it. There's quite a bit of talking in it. Even the subject matter of this podcast, it's actually relatively serious, talking about people and focus and all that sort of stuff. But dog training is serious because Well, first of all, for the sake of the dog, you're talking about a dog's life here. And it's way too common that people totally screw it up and the dog is the one that loses out the most. And talk about the people chasing the rabbit on that to figure a sport. What's the right term? Like people getting it totally freaking ass backwards and like, and they see me with the dog on a long line and kenneling and crating a young dog and all the control and instruction. And they're like, oh gosh, I would never dream of doing something so horrible to a dog. So often the people that want their dog to have all this freedom and run around and have no control and structure, and they just completely screw it up and their dog's totally out of control and ends up suffering massively. And all of a sudden, they can't let their dog off the lead at the park forever. Or their dog gets run over on the road, or gets a leg amputated, gets killed, run over on the road, or like gets a leg amputated because it got run over, or it gets attacked by another dog because it ran across the park and ran up to the wrong dog. Like so much absolutely insane chaos. Just because they don't want to have a little bit of focus and structure. So it's like reverse psychology. They've got it totally ass backwards. They're chasing the rabbit. They're chasing the wrong thing. And they actually end up getting 1,000 times more of the thing that they were trying to avoid. Because they don't understand the whole thing. So that's why it is actually, that's what I do take it very seriously. And that's why, some of these podcasts come across pretty serious. Some of the stuff in my series come across pretty serious. And I'll always be full on honest about it. Like if someone says, I had a question in a circle the other day about someone got a dog, a rehome, for free. It was like 7 months old and it was unkennelled. They didn't know the dog. It come off a farm and it was 7 months old and it was completely unkennelled, no kennel, no crate, nothing, free around the house around kids, and it was like snarling and snapping at kids. Well, so I'm not going to be all wishy-washy and fun, man. Oh, I should be fine and what you could do, nah. It's a serious subject, and I'm going to give you a serious answer. It's not always going to be like wishy-washy and fun in that. That's what the whole military thing is, right? Like the guys storming into the barracks and stand up straight and listen, and when I tell you to jump, like do what I say. And you don't need to do why, just listen and do it. And there's two main reasons for that is because we could talk about why you should do what I say forever, or I could just tell you what to do and you could just do it. The second one saves an incredible amount of time and work. And the other thing is too, is like, that's the main thing. In dog training, that's the main thing, But it is also that intensity and focus thing. And at a certain point, again, I'll talk about it this is number 44 of the podcast, and I'll do podcasts on dog training forever, and I'll run the Inner Circle groups forever, and I'll answer questions about dog training forever and talk about whatever theory and reason and why for freaking hours. That's what we're doing right now. But at some point, you do have to just go, okay, what do I do? And just do it. You know? And that does take that switch of, okay, we're not pissing around now, we're not mucking around, we're not laughing, we're not joking. That's like, that's why in the military, when someone's talking or joking down the other end while the drill sergeant's talking, that's that whole screaming up and down, shut up, stand up, sit, get down and give me 20. It's like, it's time to focus, man. You know? And yeah, it does. And like, it is like an overall, and anything, like fishing's the same. Fishing and filming, doing these podcasts, training the dog. Like it takes, if I go on holiday with some mates and we just like fun fish for a week, my first serious fishing mission on my own filming, it's going to take me that first 1 or 2 trips to just get everything sorted again and like get back in the pocket to where I want to be. And then I'm okay and then I'm locked in and going again. It's the same on the dog training. Like you do have to focus. The same as like when I was training, I was making the bird dog series. You know, if I got distracted for a few days and got too caught up in something else and was like, man, I'm sort of like off my beat here. And I'd have to just chill everything out. Go do a chill session without any massive goals. And spend a couple of days just getting the mindset right. And then I'm away. Then I'm training. Then I can film it. Then I can talk to camera and I'm away again. But yeah, it does. You do have to focus. There is an element of that. And it's probably one of the main things missing when someone's really struggling and it's really messy. There's just that overall lack of seriousness, professionalism, control, structure, and execution, and all that stuff. Yeah, and I was just been writing a bunch of these notes, and then I started that. And then I was just watching that, a short video of Bonds like talking about lure traces and stuff after writing a bunch of these notes about focus and intensity and stuff. And here's Bonds teaching this young guy about how to catch marlin. And Bonds is like, so all your traces are the same length, right? And he's like, oh nah. He's like, why not? That's it. Why not? Oh, because okay. You got to make them all the same length, okay? Okay. He was like, yeah, got it. I cracked up because that was the exact thing I'd just been writing about. Excuse me. This is quite a big part of this, okay? My note here is, here's the big thing that muddies the water on all of this, though. And here's the big contradiction. Here's the big contradiction of someone that's been listening to so much of my stuff, so much of what I said: intensity, focus, don't make mistakes, do everything right, girl, you can't, don't auto retrieve, don't do this, don't do that. It's going to make it impossible, really hard. And some people, there's like guys that are like rolling their eyes. Oh my God, this guy's so full of shit. This is the thing that muddies the water on all of this though. Some dogs you can get away with any one of the above things. So playing with someone else's dog, auto retrieving, chasing rabbits, doing this, all of those crazy things. No kennel, chilling around home, playing with the kids, doing what you want. This whole thing here is really important. Some dogs you can get away with any one of the above things and undo or fix it, and that is dependent on the dog, the situation, and the trainer, and there's unlimited different combinations of that. This is another whole matrix. So one dog might be allowed to auto retrieve on ducks, and it does that well. And the owner of that dog also uses it on deer, and it's steady. But that dog might lend itself to doing that easily, and that owner is a good handler and does a lot of hunting. And that owner might say, someone might say, oh, I'm watching this guy and I'm like doing this training, and he says if I let my dog auto retrieve ducks, I'm never going to be able to have it as a deer dog. And that guy goes, that guy's full of fucking shit. My dog auto retrieves ducks, has done for years, and I've shot 300 deer over that dog. But again, that dog might lend itself to that. He might be a good handler, does a ton of hunting, is naturally really good with dogs. He might hunt in a specific way. He might keep his dog close or put it at heel when he gets close to a deer, or did something specific for a while to manage that dog until it got the idea. But that dog is still good. It's got its problems, but that guy's deer dog auto retrieves ducks and he shoots a lot of deer over it. But that's a specific case, a specific guy and a specific dog. But doing that isn't a good idea for everyone, but there's always the exception to the rule. So it seems like a contradiction. I'm telling you not to do something when you know someone that does that and it's worked for them. But it's about percentages. And here's the big thing. That guy might try that again with a different dog in the same situation and it doesn't work. Just because something's worked for one person one time doesn't mean it's a good idea for everyone to do. And you don't know every variable and different thing that guy has done and does with that dog to get it like that. You know, and you might shoot deer over it, but how? How does it work? You know, and that guy might try that with a different dog in the same situation. It doesn't work. Something happens, the dog breaks in a deer, it keeps trying to break, something else happens, it's a pain in the ass, it doesn't work, and that dog doesn't work out, and he has to get another dog and try again, and that same thing might happen again, and it doesn't work again. And I know of exact cases of that where someone's been following my training and then they've got a mate that's got a dog he's done a bunch of stuff that I'm saying not to do, and he's got some dog that he's like slaying it with. So he's talked someone into doing a whole bunch of stuff that I don't recommend. And the person that he's talked into doing that runs into a ton of trouble with their dog. So they like get back on track. But that guy that was saying, no, you don't have to do that, man, it's bullshit because I do this with my dog and it's awesome. Well, 3 years later or 7 years later, I hear about how his dog turned to absolute shit. I'm not saying every time, but that's happened like multiple times. If someone's like, no, you don't have to do that because I've done this. But 3 years later, they're like, oh man, honestly, no, that dog's turned into an absolute nightmare. And it happens. And it can be years and years spent in multiple dogs and they can't put it back together. And that's the other thing too. Sometimes someone gets a dog and spends like, they rush in, they don't do the right amount of training, they don't do the right management, they make heaps of mistakes. And like, so at the 12-month mark, where at the, and yeah, they've shot some deer and they've had the dog with them on a duck shooting season and it retrieved some ducks. It might have even had some moments and some days where you're like, oh my God, look at him go. He's awesome. Might have been retrieving like a demon one day. But sometimes toward the end of the season, he started breaking and screwing some stuff up. Then a few other things went wrong. Then a couple of other problems. Situation starts getting worse. Oh man, I've got to try and fix this. Start trying to fix it. Holy hell, this is really difficult. And they're going into their second season with a bunch of problems and like, man, I hope this goes okay. That's their dog at like 12 or 15 months old. Whereas the dog that I've trained with the foundations for that first 12 months, they're trying to fix problems for the next 12 months and they're starting the next season like, man, I hope this isn't too much of a shambles because it was starting to go pear-shaped at the end of last year. That whole year they're stressing about it and trying to fix problems. I'm just training my whole basic retrieve. And they spent that first season, they had a couple of amazing days where they were like, holy shit, look how good my dog is. You don't have to train. This is amazing. Those training guys are full of shit. But year 2, I'm rocking in. And I've got a steady dog that's retrieving and looking real good. They might have their second year might not go that well. And yeah, the dog's retrieving birds is going okay, but it's got a few issues and some things are niggly and they're still trying to fix it. By year 3, they're thinking, by year 3, I'm rocking up with the 3-year-old with no problems and it's indicating deer and it's retrieving all the birds really well and I've had no issues and I'm away. Sometimes by year 3, someone's at the point with their dog where they're like, this dog's a freaking nightmare now and I don't know what to do. So the point of that whole rant was sometimes when people make loads of mistakes and they don't do the right stuff and they don't do the right management, they spend 3 years getting a dog to the point where they're like trying to weigh up their options and should I get another dog and start again, or but I don't really want to get rid of this dog and my missus really likes it, and that people get themselves in a really difficult positions. So, and all because they were like, oh, you skipped the first season or what? You spend like 10 months training that before you... It's that whole make haste slowly thing. And some people spend years, like really? This whole sentiment and idea boiled right down. You can spend more time ruining a dog than it takes to train a good one. That's a huge risk-benefit analysis that you have to do, and that comes into play That's the main thing. That's the main risk. That's the main reason why experienced dog owners and handlers and trainers, most solid systems are like at least a year of training or a year or two or more. And no dog's at its best at 12 or 24 months, or for a dog to, like a trial dog or whatever, to be really good at 3 years old is still relatively young. Most of them are 5 or 6 when they're like really at their best. You can start them at 12 months old, and yeah, they can do a heap of really cool stuff at 12 months old, but they're never going to be peak in their first season at 10 or 12 months old, and you often do more damage than good. So once you weigh it all up and all the risk benefit analysis and everything, it's like, that's what I mean. It's very difficult for me to help a lot of people to get a bird dog good at the 12-month-old mark. Very difficult. And I think the majority of people will run into trouble trying to do that. 24 months, skip that first season. Relatively easy. Most people can do that. And their dog's going to be even better the year after. And they'll have more options with it. Because you haven't done a bunch of auto retrieving and unsteady stuff and a bunch of hype and craziness. You could also use it as a tracking dog and an indicating dog, and the job's been easier for you. You've been cramming in less work. Your week to week, day to day workload training that dog is less. It's less load on the dog too. There's also a lot of different things where a huge part of this, guys, a huge part of it is you can screw the dog up and stuff up its drive to hunt by starting them too soon. Some of the main reasons to start a dog sooner and not hold them back, and some of the main reasons to do all those unsteady retrieves and stuff, is to improve drive and speed and all of that. And that's one of the biggest risks and challenges of holding them back and stuff. But you can stuff up just as much of that by starting too soon and doing too much too fast too. So it's that whole argument is like at best a debatable one, if not like flawed. You know, and you can debate it both ways. You can debate it, but you should be starting them sooner and getting them confident and running and charging, and don't hold them back and take the sting out of them and stuff. But as long as you do it all properly, and there's a lot in that too, of like holding them back and keeping them steady, but not taking the sting out of them and not slowing them down and building them up slowly and steadily. And man, I've thought about it a lot and worked on it a lot, and I've really like reflected on it, and particularly for helping lots of people to do it, and particularly just for a gun dog, I think holding them back is better. I really do. I wouldn't. That's the only way I'd do it personally for me, you know. But man, that whole thing about that guy that did have that dog that did work, so people use that as an example, but sometimes that guy himself can't do that again. And his next dog's a shambles. And then he tries it again, the one after that's a shambles. And then it's like the one, and then he's like, okay, how do I actually do this? And that's when you land on like a proper training system where you train the dog for a whole year, and you might even skip its first season and stuff. So, and it happens, man, it happens. This is a really interesting observation and very, very true. A guy in the professional goat control industry said to me once, he said there's some guys that have one really good dog and that starts their whole career. And remembering that a really good dog, you've got it for 10 years. So it's a long time. Some people have one really good dog and it starts their whole career, and their career rides on that dog for a very long time. But after that dog, they never have one that good again. And they only have one good dog. And there's other guys that have good dogs the whole time. You know, and some people need a special dog to have a really good dog, and other people can make almost any dog within reason, roughly within the right breed group. And, you know, some people the dog will only be good if it's a very special dog, and other people can make almost any dog very good. And it's a huge, huge difference, you know. So it's about percentages, and with the size of the commitment that owning and training a dog is, with experience you learn it's just faster to do it all properly right from the start. You only need to screw up one dog and get to the point at the 2 or 3 year mark where you're like, oh man, this isn't working, and I've just spent the last 3 years screwing this dog up, and it's not what I want now, and I know I can have better, but if I do what I've done this time again, I'm going to be in the same situation in 3 years' time. So how do I do it actually properly? And all of a sudden, skipping the first season with the bird dog seems quick. You know? So back to that guy that had that great dog that he did stuff wrong with, doing the same thing that the other dog that did work for the guy that this is freaking paragraph this. I'm just checking it. Yeah, so I'll have a go at reading this. I think it makes sense, but it is quite the mouthful though. So that guy that had the dog that auto-retrieved birds, but he also shot heaps of deer over it, and he thought it was awesome. So he was like, why doesn't everyone just do this? And why is everyone mucking around with all that training and stuff? If you go back to that guy that had that great dog that did all that stuff wrong with, if you give that dog to someone else in a different situation that isn't as good a handler or doesn't hunt as much or wants a really steady deer dog they can let range out more, ride in close and lock up on deer so he can sneak in behind the dog and shoot over the dog, all of these other variables, right? What worked for that other guy in that situation with that dog probably won't work with someone else in a different situation, and they probably won't get what they want. So there's so many different variables, and a good training system is designed to work for as many different people and dogs and situations as possible, and not set anyone up to get part way down the road with a dog and run into trouble. It's about risk mitigation. I've got a note here, talk about how much of a big deal it is when it goes wrong. I've sort of already done that, talking about how, you know, you can get a year or two down the track with a dog, 3-4 years down the track with a dog, and it's all going pear. I see it over and over and over again. where people didn't know, or they didn't have a system, or they got talked in and out of doing something, and they've screwed it up, and they've got this dog that isn't working, that they're having great difficulty with, and it's super heartbreaking and disappointing, and they can't get rid of that one, and they can't get another one, and they're just like, it's that real head and hand thing that, oh man, I've just stuffed this up, and it's rough, man. That's why it's so serious. Like, that's why I take this so seriously, guys, because it's a huge responsibility to give people a system and say, hey, if you follow this, you'll be right, you know. But those are the three main variables: the dog, the handler, and the situation. I've already sort of talked about this. I've got a note here: the rare bad apple, the dog that's unfixable, and that it's really rare, and I've only seen it a handful of times. And it's generally too, when those three variables, it is a really full-on dog, and the handler is really not cut out for it, and the situation is really bad. Like, it's a really full-on dog, and they do tons of stuff really wrong with it, and the handler's really not cut out to catch up with it again. But I have even seen some dogs that have been, and mainly high prey drive dogs, like a Dutch Drathar or something, that's been able to self-hunt and, say, chase rabbits and scrag stuff and pull stuff down, and they just and play with other dogs and do all of that full-on externally focused stuff, and the handler and listening and cooperation is just the lowest priority thing for that dog, and all its priorities are everything else, and it's just other dogs doing what I want, chasing, killing, doing, and they can just be really hard to work with. I haven't seen many of them. I've seen a couple, like less than what I can count on one hand, that I've been, that's the right breed, roughly the right age, and I'm just like, you know what, even me, that dog is not worth the squeeze for me. Like, I don't know what, and that this is why it's so serious, guys, because then what do you do with that dog now? That dog, you can't leave it off anywhere, it just takes off. They don't want it, I don't want it. It's not a good pet. Jumping up on everyone all over the place. It's full on with other dogs. It's going to kill the cat. It's going to be next door. It's going to be 5 paddocks away if I turn my back. What do you do with that? That's why it's so serious, you know. I've already talked about this, talking about the matrix. But yeah, the degree of difficulty in training, the quality of the final result, and how nice the dog will be to hunt over. And that's it, right? There's loads, but let's just say for now, perhaps 2 of the main parts of what makes a good dog is, and 100% you need both, but what priority are you going to put on which one of these 2 parts that you need large amounts of both? But one is just raw performance. So let's take a bird dog, for example, a bird dog that'll run, I don't know, a very long line to go and retrieve a bird, or it'll swim a very long water retrieve to get a bird off a big pond or lake or body of water. A dog that'll swim across a massive river or swim way downstream in a river to get a bird. A dog that'll carry a bird through very challenging terrain, you know, maybe through reeds in water and hold the bird. and not just be like, "Whoa, this is going pear-shaped," and drop the bird and abandon the retrieve. So just raw performance, you know. Someone could say, "Oh, how good's the dog? What's a good dog?" Or someone might say, "Man, I've got a good dog," and someone might be thinking, "Far out, he's saying he's got a really good dog. It must just be a beast on the retrieve, and it must just do crazy long water retrieves and crazy long straight lines, send it as far as you want, and never drops a retrieve, and just like a weapon." But how good is all of that if it's a frickin' nightmare? And often the two are opposing forces. It's much easier to have a dog that does all of those things that's totally out of control. It's much harder to have a dog that is also a beast, but is totally under control and is nice to hunt over. So because another person might say, when someone says, "Man, I've got a good dog at the moment. This dog's like, I'm really stoked with it." They might think, "Far out, it must be like steady and under control and like really a joy to hunt with." So, and that's what I mean. You obviously want like basically as much as possible of both of those two things. You want performance, but you need steadiness. And all the performance in the world is no good if the dog's a freaking nightmare. And it's breaking and chasing stuff and putting birds up and running through the neighbor's farm, and you lose it down the river, and it's barking and whining and just a freaking night, jumping out of the boat and getting tangled up in decoys and just like an absolute nightmare. All the performance in the world is no good. And all the steadiness in the world is no good if the dog won't get the freaking duck. Both are just as important. And like, man, this is a subject that I've got stuck on bird dogs, because there's so much full on stuff out there, and there's all the trialing scene and all of that, and social media, and you see dogs doing stuff, and people see dogs doing stuff and say, "Oh, you know, that's what I want." There's a guy, I need to get him on the podcast. Actually, he's keen to come on. A guy in England that very good trainer on bird dogs, and he trains with a lot of very good trainers and in the trialing scene and all of that sort of thing. And he posted a meme. It's and he trains people to train dogs, so he's sort of got a finger on the pulse on that. And I've been aware of this for a long time, like that. People that haven't done it don't realize how much work it takes to get a bird dog to do some of the stuff that you see online. And I had it as soon as I started getting into bird dog training and saying I was going to make bird dog things. People that didn't have a dog that did that were like, "Oh, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that?" And straight away I was thinking, man, I don't think you'd realize how much work there is involved in that. And I don't even I think if you knew how much work there was involved in doing that, I don't think you would even want to do it. You'd just be like, "What? Oh, okay. Oh, I don't need that then. How do I just have a dog that just gets the ducks, that isn't a pain in the ass?" You know, that's enough work. And if you do all that correctly, you can stack that other stuff on top of that. That's why my next series is going to be foundations, because it's not like the deer dog and bird dog training masterclass blueprint, everything you could ever do with a dog, because that's endless. I'm just going to call it the foundations. But it's actually going to be more than most people want to do or are capable of doing or need to do. That's a big thing that I've been working out the last few years, is like, how much do people want? How much can people do? How much are people going to do? And how much do people need? But I'll be thinking about that a lot and working it out after making the Bird Dog series and all that. And obviously constantly answering questions and working with people. And this guy put this meme up that was just it to a T, and it was funny. It was like a Instagram meme, and I don't know if all of you will be familiar with the Denzel Washington movie Training Day. I want to get this guy's name right, actually, because Ethan Hawke. He was actually just on the Joe Rogan podcast. But so the Training Day is a movie, it's a classic good cop, bad cop movie, actually. Really good. I actually quite like it. It's quite a real classic Denzel Washington movie. And Denzel Washington character is the old cop, but he's a crooked cop. And Ethan Hawke's character is the new fresh-faced cop, and he's all idealistic and all fresh-faced, bushy tail, and like, I'm going to fight crime and make the world a better place. And Denzel's character is the old, basically burnt out, crooked cop who has, rightly or wrongly, that's up to the viewer, obviously wrongly because he's a super crooked bad guy. He's just turned into a bad cop, and he's just like, oh, you can't fight all the crime, so what are you going to do? We'll just bust some bad guys' chops and make some crooked money on the side. And Denzel, as the crooked cop, is trying to tell the new young cop that this is what it is. This is what all cops are like. And Ethan Hawke's character has just seen a bunch of crazy stuff, and he's saying, "Man, what are you? It can't be like this. What do you mean? I can't believe it's like this. It can't be like this." And it's a super deep moment, And Denzel's character's like, "I hate to be the one to expose you to it, but this is what it's like." And Ethan Hawke's character's like, "Man," and he's just like shocked and horrified, and struggling to wrap his head around it. And that's a really intense clip. And this guy put that clip up. But the meme is, the little sentence above that is, when I'm showing people how to train long blinds, is by doing hundreds of memory retrieves. And in a session, it's like someone comes to them all bright-faced, bushy-tailed, and is like, "I want to do those awesome big long blind retrieves that you do." And he takes them out and shows them how to do memory retrieves, and shows them you can improve your blind by, and that's what I was, this basically exactly what I was doing in the Bird Dog Bootcamp, which is a series that's on my podcast now, on my website now, the Bird Dog Bootcamp. And I do a bunch of retrieves and memories, and you essentially extend your blind. I start off doing blinds like real close, real short. It might even be you might have to walk the dog right up to 5 meters away from the blind to get it to go and pick it up. And it goes out there, oh, holy shit, there's a bumper there, and they pick it up and bring it back. If you try to do too long of blinds and you keep sending the dog and they don't find it, it stuffs them up. and you're making it worse and more messy. That's why you do memories. A memory is when you drop a retrieve, the dog sees it and the dog knows it's there. You walk the dog away from it and then send it for the dummy, and it's got to remember, oh, yep, I still remember that dummy's over in that corner. And your memories, memories you can get back to 100-meter memory pretty quick and relatively easily. So then you get the dog cranking on memories, and then you do some easy blinds so it knows what a blind is. It knows there might be a dummy out there when it hasn't seen you throw one. But then you go back and try to make your blind longer, and you start sending the dog and it gets confused. It's pretty easy to get to 20-meter blind. Then 50-meter blind's not that hard, especially in short cover. And then a 50-meter blind and a bit more cover with a whole dead duck's not that hard, because there's so much scent with a bit of wind coming the right way and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden that's taken like a month or 2 months to get to like a 50-meter blind that if you don't work on them for a while and you don't do a bunch of memories and you don't do everything perfect and you try to send the dog, it'll get confused, and every time you set it up to fail, you've taken heaps of steps back and you're like shooting yourself in the foot. So long story short, like you go, man, it actually takes a lot of work to get like a really good reliable, straight, blind line that you can just set your dog up, point in a direction and say, go back. And they just like fire out on that straight line. And then if you want back inside, you need to be able to stop them, send them sideways, and then stop them and send them back again. And all of that's your back and blind, back and sides. That to do it all properly is a very slow process with lots and lots of retrieves. And every time you try and go too fast, you're shooting yourself in the foot and making it way harder. Every time you set the dog up to fail and it fails and gets confused and gets all messy, you've just made more work for yourself fixing that. So that training day, dog training meme of someone realizing the pace of it and how thorough and careful you have to be and how long it's going to take to get to the point where you've seen but haven't done yet, where you've seen someone that can just fire that dog out on that 300-meter blind line. That's that training day meme of Ethan Hawke's character. It can't be like this. And Denzel's like, I'm sorry to be the one to expose you to it, but this is exactly what it is. It's like, but that's that super high level, that crazy high level of bird dog handling like that. Those trialing guys, the amount of work that they do and the way that they do it is pretty full on. That it does get pretty full on. But to train a pet dog, what my first 12 months of foundations is going to be, anyone can do that. And it's actually less work or as much work as you need to walk a dog. You can't just leave a dog locked in the kennel the whole 24/7. And you can't just leave them off running around the whole time. You have to do something with them, right? To do the right amount of stuff to have a decent foundation at the end of 12 months is no more work than doing it wrong or right or really wrong or anything. It's just doing the right stuff. And not making it's so much of it is about what you don't do. Bit of decent management, don't make all of the ridiculous mistakes and do a tiny bit of work, have a tiny bit of focus, and you'll be very surprised at where your dog can be after that first 12 months. Then what I would call foundations of bird dog training, it's exactly the same thing. 15, 20 minutes, 3 or 4 days a week for the next 12 months, you can have a very tidy, very handy bird dog that will be a lot better than 99% of people's bird dogs by the time it's 24 months old. No problems, no issues. You haven't created any more work here. You haven't created any problems. You haven't shot yourself in the foot. Minimum amount of work. It's been pretty chill, and like it's all upside. Anyone can do that. That's pretty chill. Then to add the bird dog, the deer dog training stuff, once you've got that first 12 months of foundation and you've done all the bird dog training stuff as well, keeping it steady the whole time, adding the deer dog stuff to that is like bugger all, a few months. Finish your first duck dog season. It's one of those things where I could say you could probably do it in 6 or 8 weeks, but on top of 24 months, what does it really matter if it's 8 weeks or 16 weeks? It's on a 10-year deal, which a dog is, and you've already been training for 24 months, what's the frickin' rush now? Like to rush to try and do it, what can easily be done really, really well in 6 months. Why try and do it in 2, man? Just stop. Just do it properly. And the other thing is too, is once you've trained one, now you've got that for like 8 or 10 years. And now you know that dog's just going to get better and better and better and better. You can start your second, you're only waiting on your first one because you can start your second dog. So that's ready before you retire your first. You know, like that's why I've got to start a new dog, and that's why I'm going to make some series, is because Miko's like 9 now. So, yeah, I need to start a dog. So she's Miko's still, you know, for her age, she's like, she tears around like a frickin', she's in her prime. She's like charging, good as gold, physically, mentally, everything. Vizslas, touch wood. Vizslas are known for, she's a Vizsla heading dog cross. I've known some Vizslas that have lasted a long time, so hopefully Miko's like that. But she is getting on a bit, so I need to start another dog. So, but Miko's still blimmin' good, and she's going to be really good, touch wood, for another couple of years, maybe even longer, 2 or 3 years. But so you start your second one while you still got your first one, you know, and then you just roll them over like that. So you should always have a good dog, and you should never be rushing to get the second one. So when you're talking about having, if you want to be a hunter and dog owner for your whole life, you're only really trying to have patience for that first one. And if you stuff it up, you can just have the opposite outcome, where if you try to rush it because you want a good dog straight away, you can be arriving at the 2-year mark realizing that you've stuffed it all up and have to start again, or you can be arriving there going, I took my time and I'm good, you know. On foundations, which is going to be overall general foundations, then bird dog, then deer dog. That's the way around I'm going to do it. You're also going to be able to use that first 12 months foundation. And if you don't want a bird dog, you're going to be able to go straight to the deer dog too and just use it to train a deer dog. Or the other way around, you could go do the first 12 months foundation, do your deer dog stuff, get into that, and then do the bird dog later, or vice versa, all fully interchangeable. So you'll be able to do one or the other or both. Or just the first one, the foundation's just for someone that wants to train a pet, you know. And I say that 12 months first, 12 months foundation, 12 months on the bird dogs stuff, fully trained bird dog at 24 months old, then do the deer dog stuff. I wouldn't recommend it, but you will be able to you'll be able to overlap them a little bit. So you'll be able to start on the bird dog one when the dog's about 8 or 10 months old. And then you'll also be able to overlap the deer dog one too. So you'll probably be able to do them both. You'll probably actually be able to do the foundation and the bird dog one in about 18 months. You know, and then foundation, bird dog, and deer dog by about 24 months. But it all comes down to being very careful and weighing up that whole, well, if you stuff something up, it can take longer than it takes to train a dog to stuff a dog up and then have to start again anyway. And also, that whole matrix thing where if you rush it and you make too many mistakes, you're just making more work for yourself, which can take more time, more work to get a lesser result. And I'm sure I've got this here somewhere. This is it really. A good training system creates a situation where you get the highest possible payoff for the least amount of work and the lowest chance of catastrophic failure. That's really what it is. And the more you try to rush it, you can definitely take too long. You know, you can definitely take too long. And every dog's a little bit different too. Some dogs you can move a little bit faster. Some dogs you can move a little bit slower. But what happens more so though is some dogs will move through some parts faster than another dog, but that same dog will move through other parts. You have to spend more time on other things. So they'll have different strengths and weaknesses. And generally overall, most dogs will take about the same amount of time. But some dogs will need more time and work in some areas, and other dogs will need more time and work in other areas. Again, strengths and weaknesses. But most dogs, the overall time frame is generally about the same. And again, a huge part of that time thing, and just like slow down, take your time, do it properly, make haste slowly. It's actually in the interest of as little work as possible, as the best result possible, also as fast as possible with the lowest chance of catastrophic failure. And the more you try and speed it up, the more you screw up that whole matrix. And the more you just go, it comes back to that same thing. I think, again, if you said you need to train as many people as possible to have the best bird dog possible within 12 months, I wouldn't, there's no way I can have a good track record on that. That would be very difficult. And if I took that on, be no good. I'd just make more messes and get more people into more trouble than I'd be helping. But if you say 24 months, yeah, I can do that. Can help a lot of people train some pretty good dogs in that time frame. And anyone that said, I've only got 18 months, I need to rush it, I need to do this, I'd be saying, I mean, you can try if you want, but that you've got a much lower chance of that working out well. So it's like this crazy reverse psychology thing, right? It's the same as the lady that's like, I'd never do that with a dog. That's been horrible to the dog. And often, I shouldn't say a lady, it often is though. The person that wants to be quote unquote nice to the dog ends up absolutely screwing it up, and it ends up absolute disaster for the dog. Whereas someone that has more of a structured routine that she was trying to avoid, their dog ends up having a great life with loads of freedom and does heaps of cool stuff. So it's like a reverse psychology. There's a proper word term for that. What is that? It's like you know what I mean? Counterintuitive is a relatively good word for it. It's the same on the time thing, and it's the same on the overall work thing too. You can try to avoid the work and just create so much more work for yourself, you know. And actually, the amount of work that I do training a dog is to avoid the work of like stuffing a dog up or having a bad dog. So some people look at how I train and think stuff it, that's a lot of work, but it's actually all designed to avoid work and avoid failures and to avoid making more work. And to have a very high chance of success and a very low chance of stuff up with the minimum amount of work possible. It's all about a very high reward to work ratio. For example, when I get a nice heading dog pup to train as a deer dog, I basically know it's going to be good. And when I get another nice Labrador pup, I know it'll be a good bird dog. It's not as if I'm trying, maybe, hoping. It's like, what do we need to do just to know this is gonna work? Because that's really the only thing that makes sense, and you can do it too. So why would you do anything else? That's what it all comes down to. That's what any system is all about. It's about achieving a goal or carrying out a process with the highest chance of a good result and the lowest chance of failure, and keeping that work-reward ratio as good as you can, and also making it enjoyable. It should be fun and relaxed all the way through training and into hunting and those first few hunts. You should be relaxed and enjoyable. That's the craziest thing, right? Is I think that's a common problem and mistake too, is that people mistake focus for focus. Somehow people and people somehow mistake focus and intensity with or associate it with like discomfort and burning energy and like, God, that sounds horrible and lots of work and stuff. And they often associate or go into that, I just did it like this because no, it's all cool, and no, I just want it to be like this, and they're avoiding that focus. Trust me, there is nothing more exhausting than an out of control dog not listening that's a shambles. And whether you're training it or you own it or you're trying to hunt with it or it's your pet, there is nothing more exhausting than that. You know, and it with any process, and that, like, that's why I like fishing on my own too. As I just have it, like, and I am very focused, but like, it's also one of the most relaxing things to do. So being focused and like intensity, you're not like intensity sounds like intensity just means it's basically just sustained focus and being ready and acting like right when you need to, and just it's just like doing the thing. I'll tell you what, and this is what it's like, a oxymoron, or a incredibly like counterintuitive or massive contradiction, or a dichotomy, where I actually find it might be a bit of a me thing too, like maybe introverted or something, I don't know. But I don't think it is necessarily just that. But I actually find like chaos, and that's what I mean. I don't think it's not just a me thing or like a personality thing or anything. Like just chaos and wishy-washy flippancy and letting issues slide, and like everything's sort of turning to crap, but I don't care anyway. Or I'm not even trying and I don't have a system. It's just whatever happens, bro. Like, no matter what you're doing, that's way more chaotic and exhausting and creates way more problems than having a system. And just, you don't even need to focus on it. It's you just do it. Get rid of everything else and just do it. Like, so training for me is actually relaxing. It's actually chill, and it kind of needs to be too. You can't train with conflict, and so that intensity, it's not really the right word. It's like but it kind of gets you closer to the idea of what I'm trying to talk about. You get the point. It's more focus. It's more like get rid of everything else and just do it, and just focus on it. But what you should be focusing on and doing is actually quite relaxed, and that's all you're doing. That's all you do. You're not doing a whole bunch of other stuff. You're not distracted. You're not making excuses. It's not this, that, the other. Like, you just do the thing properly, and you know what you're doing, and you have a plan, and you just do it. And it's actually very chill and enjoyable. It's like, on either one, fishing is exactly the same, because if I'm fishing quote unquote with extreme intensity, I got my first kingfish on a fly, saltwater fly kingfish, and you could say, and a couple of people have said to me, some people, I was like fly fishing in a spot, which fly fishing in a spot is just standing on the bow of my boat with the Minn Kota. I'm on my own with a fly rod in my hand, with a Minn Kota, remote in my hand, remote in one hand, fly rod in the other, standing on the bow of my boat, driving up and down the coast for hours. But I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not doing anything else. All I'm doing is I'm ready for a fish and I don't do anything else. It's the most chill, relaxing thing you could ever imagine. You know, and so is doing retrieves with the dog or walking the dog. So intensity, but that's the exact word that people would use. It's like that. They're not. It's like, what are you? Because I was doing that. Someone come past, and then they come past again and back past, and I was just there in the same spot. And I saw them at the boat ramp, and they were like, "How'd you get on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got a kingy." And they were like, "You were there like all day doing just that." And I was like, "Yeah, I was there for quite a while." And I'm like, "That's full. That's hard out, man." Where it's like the most chill thing. What could be more chill than standing on the bow of a boat in glassy, clear water? I'm like right by this island, there's birds in the trees and all. It's like the most chill thing ever. Super relaxing. Got like the so relaxed, clear mind. Everything's just mint at the end of it. So it is like a very counterintuitive thing. And when they say you need intensity, you need to focus, you need it's and the dog training is exactly the same. That's what it is. You've got to be chill, but you've got to be focused and you've got to do it. And very consistent. I guess that's what the same with the fly fishing. Got to be very consistent and ready to go. You know, and dog training is exactly the same. You have to be very consistent. Yeah. That's it. That's the end of the notes. That went far better than I thought it would. I had no idea how that would go based on my notes and some of the subject matter there. Yeah, that's how people screw it up. Like it's just those main things: lack of structure, lack of control, and everything. Most of it comes from just wanting it to be chill, but it ends up being the opposite of chill. It's like that dog that I was telling you about that I said I wouldn't say the name because I don't want to, you know, put the person on blast or anything for them to hear it and be like, man, he's talking, you know. They were a very like chill, vibey, bubbly, happy person, you know, and you can tell they just want everything to be chill and fun, but they want to train the dog. And this dog was just chaos. It was a nightmare. And they're having a lot of trouble with it, and it was turning into a big problem. So sometimes you end up with like 10 times more of the thing that you're trying to avoid by trying to avoid it. And you need to... This is super cliche. I can't believe I'm about to say it. But Jocko Willink has that saying. Well, it's not cliche, actually. I shouldn't even like try to brush it off like that. Jocko Willink has that saying that discipline equals freedom. So it's like he talks. Jocko Willink talks about dichotomies all the time, and the dichotomy of leadership and all of that. But it's very true. There is a lot of dichotomies and counterintuitive things in life in general. And it really is the same with dogs. It's the same as the whole, it's actually discipline equals freedom is actually a much better way. And it's the exact same principle of, I had the principle years ago of, man, I can't even think of it off the top of my head. Freedom and responsibility. That was the tagline I had for it, freedom and responsibility. And then the whole thing was people try to give their dog too much freedom and responsibility before the dog's ready for it, and then that sets the dog up for failure. So then the dog fails heaps and gets heaps of bad habits. Then it has all the bad habits, and then they end up having to restrict its freedom and responsibility forever. So it's counterintuitive. And Jocko Willink says discipline equals freedom, because in life, if you're disciplined and you do all of the things that you should do, if you do all of the things that you should do when you should do them, then everything's done, and then you can go and do what you want. So then you have freedom. But if you screw around and you never do the things that you should do when you should do them, then in life you end up in a bad situation, and then you have no freedom at all, because you've screwed your life up and you're broke and whatever. It's all going to work out terribly. But if you're disciplined and you do everything that you need to do, you end up in a good situation, and then you can kind of do what you want. So it's a very Jordan Peterson has a very similar yarn, and him and Jocko Willink have talked about that even together in podcasts that they've done together, how they both come to very similar conclusions about some really important things, like totally separately, and that's what a principle is. It's like a universal principle. And that's what it is. Like with the dog and all of that, dogs and all of that stuff. There's another like saying about, it's a little bit of a full on one, but it's like trying to avoid pain causes pain. So if you don't exercise and work out, eventually you're going to get really out of shape, and you're going to get sick, or you're going to get an injury, you're going to have a sore knee or something. So you go after the pain, chase the pain to avoid the pain later on. So exercise, and it makes sense, right? It actually does. Exercising is uncomfortable, but it gets you in shape, which avoids being uncomfortable later by having injury or sickness or something. It's the same thing with the dog training. You've actually got to seek it out and go after it and get it and do it to avoid having to do way more of it later on. That's what it is. And it's not that hard. Again, that's the whole sort of conclusion that I've come to. Well, I come to it years ago, but, and that's what the blueprint is that I made like 10 years ago with some of those principles in it. I think most people can have a much better dog doing less work than they think. I think they can have I think most people can have a better dog than they even want or need by doing an amount of work that they can actually do. That's what I'm saying. I think most people, a really good, desirable result is possible for most people. But you do have to do a certain amount of work, not completely avoid it all. You need the right management and structure, and you can't make too many mistakes, and then you can have what you want. That's basically what it is. Righto, I'm going to wrap it up, leave it there. What do I have here? here's my wrap up note. So like I said, quite a biggie, but if you want a good dog and you don't want stuff ups, you really do have to follow the training. None of it is there for no reason, and it's actually all there to avoid problems and unnecessary work and failure. It's definitely make haste slowly and do the work that's in front of you. Otherwise, you risk creating more work. That's it, team. Like I said, I'm starting a new series soon, right from a pup. But anyway, see you in the next podcast or video or post, whatever it is. See you later.